The following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
This morning, we are pleased to welcome back to ABNY New York City Public Advocate Bill de Blasio. Bill got a start in New York City government working on David Dinkins' campaign for mayor, and then served as an aide in the mayor's office. During the Clinton administration, Bill was the appointed regional director of HUD, where he worked under the then Secretary Andrew Cuomo. In 2000, Bill managed Hillary Clinton's successful campaign for U.S. Senate, and the following year was elected to New York City Council, where he represented the 39th district, which includes several neighborhoods in western Brooklyn. Bill was elected to serve as New York City's public advocate in November of 2009. We look forward to hearing about your efforts to promote economic growth throughout the city. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New York City Public Advocate Bill de Blasio.
Thank you so much, Bill. And Bill, I want to thank you and your extraordinary family for all you have done for our city. I had the pleasure of speaking in July at NYU at the Wagner School, the Rudin Family Forum. Everywhere I go, I find the Rudin family doing something good for this city, and I thank you. And please. And I think ABNY is really one of the consciences of this city, and I thank ABNY for all you do. And speaking of consciences, let me formally now introduce mine, and I will introduce her with a quick story. Bill mentioned that I worked in City Hall. And one day in 1991, I was minding my own business. This is how all good stories begin. And a vision of beauty glided toward me in the middle of my busy workday. And if you doubt that there is love at first sight, I assure you it does exist. The thunderbolt struck me, but for Shirlane, it took many, many months for the thunderbolt to arrive. She finally agreed to go out on a date with me. And as I said, she is my conscience and my inspiration and my wife of 18 years, Shirlane McCrae. Now I want to start by referencing what I think is one of the most powerful public moments of 2012. I happened to be in the Time Warner Center in Charlotte the night of September 5th when Bill Clinton gave his speech. I thought it was really one of the extraordinary moments in recent public discourse. And I not only appreciated the argument he laid out, and I appreciated the way that he combined what he had done to the work President Obama is doing now. I think, like many Americans, I got from that speech a sense of clarity, a sense of hope, a sense of a direction we needed to go in. For me, it was also very personal. As Bill mentioned, I served under President Clinton and his administration. I had the great honor of working with the then First Lady on her first campaign. So I felt a personal appreciation, a personal connection, but I also felt that it summarized something philosophically crucial in how we have to approach the times we're in. And at NYU, I said this a few months back, and I say it many places. We're in a structurally different time, a structurally different economic moment than most of us have known throughout our lives, and that demands a different approach. In the speech, one brief section from that speech I think summarized it beautifully. The president said, "We think the country works better with a strong middle class, with real opportunities for poor folks to work their way into it, with a relentless focus on the future, with business and government actually working together to promote growth and broadly shared prosperity. You see, we believe that we're all in this together is a far better philosophy than you're on your own." The President Clinton, I think, expanded in that speech upon something else he did, which is very striking. I don't think it got the attention it deserved. The book he wrote last year, Back to Work, which I think is a tremendous analysis and prescription for where we need to go economically. I think this is true for cities and states and the federal government equally. What he said in that book, one quick section, he said, "Policy failures over the years have given us anemic, increasingly unequal economy with too few jobs and stagnant incomes, and put us at a competitive disadvantage compared with other nations. and he called for, quote, a focus on what role government must play in America's renewal. Now, the president said government, and he didn't just say federal government. You'll remember that his original milieu was his experiences in his hometown, famously talked about for years, and his work as governor of Arkansas. So his analysis regards the role that government at all levels must play in restarting this economy, making it more equal, creating real lasting prosperity, and that pathway to the middle class, which has been elusive lately. When I spoke at NYU in July, I tried to lay out some of the things I think we need to do as a city playing off of this same kind of philosophy. And I think we can have an increasingly strong middle class. I think we can have the most innovative private sector in the world. That's been New York's tradition. And I think we can have shared prosperity, but shared prosperity that reaches across all 5 boroughs, every type of neighborhood. You may be thinking, well, some of the factors are beyond our control in the national or the international economy. That's true, but New York City has a unique capacity to shape its own destiny because of all that we bring to the table in both our public and private sectors. Some of the tools, I think, and I mentioned this at NYU, are crucial to spurring growth. Very briefly, we have to rethink and retool our development process. I've heard from developers big and small throughout the city that the slowness and lack of predictability in the process is what is fundamentally undermining job creation and progress. I think that is an artificial dynamic that we can overcome with a reliable system for making land use decisions more quickly. And I think that also will help us to get to the community benefits we need more quickly. I think we need to lessen the burden of needless fines on our small businesses. It's been, in my view, a dynamic in this city in recent years where we treat small businesses as a revenue source rather than a job creation partner. I think we're making that mistake, particularly when it comes to our immigrant small businesses. We can do much better on that front. I think we have to leverage the assets we have. I've talked before about our pension system, $120 billion that I don't think we're using as strategically as we could, because only 1% of our pension investments are spurring on economic growth here in New York City. I think that's a mistake. Other states and cities are doing better. We need to get to a more strategic and assertive place when it comes to using our pension investments, and equally our procurement process, our contracting process, so we can have sustainable growth here. Finally, the other thing I talked about at NYU, better preparing our workforce here and now and for the future by actually making our career and technical education system align to the jobs that are available, to the sectors that are growing, and connecting those schools to actual businesses. It's an area where we've had a few shining star examples, but not enough deep connection between the business community and our schools. These are things we need to do. We need to do them now. Some of them will cost us money, some of them will save us money. Some of them are revenue neutral. But they're the kind of things that we need to do assertively to create economic growth that really reaches the whole city. That's some of what I talked about the here and now. But what we're facing, as I said, it's structural, it's deeper. And there's some longer-term things we have to do to change the dynamics. Just let me give you some of the statistics and the reality we're facing. Today, 9.7% unemployment in this city. That's a staggeringly high figure, an unacceptable figure. You're talking about Brooklyn, it's 11%, the Bronx, it's 14%. That's not sustainable. We have to do something differently if we want to address that. We have to recognize even more fully the kind of global competition we're up against. It used to be we talked about competing with New Jersey or Connecticut. Now it's national, LA, Boston, Chicago. It's international, it's London, it's Singapore, it's Shanghai. It's a different world. We have to be more agile and strategic. Our competitors are doing just what Bill Clinton talked about. Our competitors are thinking all the time about how their governments at all levels can help them sustain economic growth and can help spur private sector activity. I don't think we as a country or we as a city are doing enough of that. Now, what should the city be focused on for the long term? Let me use one statistic that I think summarizes the challenge. According to the United States Department of Education, 60% of the jobs in the 21st century will require skills possessed by only 20% of the American workforce at this point. That's the problem. We're not building the skill set necessary for the jobs ahead and the economic reality ahead. New York City has always had the most educated and productive workforce. But we're not taking the steps now to sustain that historical reality. So what we have to do is say, what will it take to get our education system to focus on the goal of every child being either ready to go to college or ready to go productively straight into the workforce? And I've said some of that will be about connecting schools to business more thoroughly than we're doing today, but some of it will be about making strategic, longer-term investments. Let's face it, we're in a city with deeply entrenched educational disparities. Some kids have a chance and prevail throughout life. Some kids are not given that full chance. And we just can't succeed as a city if that reality continues. It's not what we believe in. I know a lot of the people in this room. It's not what we philosophically want. We want opportunity for all. But this is not just about ideals. This is about economic reality. This is about aligning our education system to the economy that is moving rapidly and securing our economic future. And you look around the country, you look around the world, our competitors have gotten that message, and here's what they say when it comes to education. Start learning sooner, keep learning longer. That's what we see around the country and around the world. So what I think we need is a serious investment in making our education system truly prepare our kids for the modern economy. I don't think you can do that through pilots and one-offs. I don't think we're talking about minimal remediation. We're talking about foundationally changing the approach. And by the way, as a taxpayer myself, we're talking about putting money where it will have the biggest impact. We're talking about strategic investments that every citizen and every taxpayer can see have a lasting, powerful effect. It's also what our parents need. You know, Charlene and I have brought up 2 kids in this city, and we know what parents all over this city are struggling with. And the modern economy is making it harder. The stresses of parenting are harder than ever. People are struggling to get the income they used to be able to get more easily just a few years ago. The parenting equation is harder than ever. If you want the economy to work, you have to make sure that parenting can work as well. So what we need is a more fundamental transformation of our approach, particularly at the early years of education, and we have to make it universal. It can't be some kids are lucky enough to get it and others are not. And again, I say that as a parent of 2 kids who went through our public school system and having talked to thousands of parents around this city about their reality. So what am I calling for today? I'm calling for a new comprehensive early education system that serves every 4-year-old in New York City, and I'm calling for a major expansion of after-school academics and enrichment in our middle schools, that sensitive middle school level, to help solidify the skills of our kids so they will be ready for that economic future. I think this is something we all have to do together so we are really ready for the 21st century. Now let's first talk about early education. I was very involved in this issue in the City Council, and for some years we actually were making progress with quality childcare and expanding teaching childcare to more and more kids in the city, and then we started to go in the wrong direction. Again, this is not just a discussion of fairness or how we address inequality. This is a very economic discussion, because we've seen time and time again that this is where our education dollars have the biggest impact. And that, in fact, if we keep investing too late in the process, we are actually using money in a way that's not fair to ourselves, our children, and our taxpayers. Now, let me give you a sense of what the competition is doing. I think it's pretty stark. The Center for American Progress, the Center for Next Generation, reported in August. By 2020, China will enroll 40 million children in preschool, a 50% increase from today, and they'll provide 70% of children with 3 years of preschool. By 2020, India will more than double the percentage of children entering school ready to learn, and then by 2030 go even higher. In the United States, 60% of kindergartners come in lacking basic skills like counting to 10 and recognizing letters of the alphabet. Competition knows what it takes. We as a country, we as a state, we as a city have to do better. In the Times a few months ago, Charles Blow looked at these kind of numbers. This is what he said. He said, quote, "We're cutting back while our children's future competitors are plowing ahead. We don't have any time or students to waste. Every child in this country must be equipped to perform. The country's future financial stability depends on it. And the future depends, in my view, on making sure that 100% of our children have early education opportunity. Now, some people in this room, a very smart, civically engaged room full of people, a lot of people who know how to count well. So you're going to say, is this a good investment? Let me quote Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, from this July, quote, "Economically speaking, early childhood programs are a good investment with inflation-adjusted annual rates of return on the funds dedicated to these programs estimated to reach 10% or higher. Very few alternative investments can promise that kind of return." So what am I saying specifically? We have about 68,000 kids now who are our universe. That's about the number that go into kindergarten now. That's far from the number who are getting the kind of pre-K education they need. Right now in this city, only 20,000 kids get full-time early education through pre-K. 38,000 have part-time. That's 3 hours a day on a schedule that does not work for parents or for the modern economy and doesn't give kids what they need. There's about 10,000 kids who don't get pre-K who need it in this city. So when you add up the 10,000 who don't get it, the 38,000 who only get 3 hours a day, we have 50,000 kids being underserved. That's our future leadership, and that's our future workforce, and we're not preparing them. And by the way, as I said, our competitors are moving forward on this front. In this city, since 2008, we have cut, in total, 9,000, so the net, 9,000 quality childcare and early education seats since 2008. So we have actually gone backwards while our competitors are going forward. How do we get to that 100% concept? How do we get to a point where when a child turns 4 years old in New York City, unless they are going to a private program or their family decides they need them to stay home, how do we get to that point where they are plugged into an education system that gets them learning from the very beginning? Because I assure you they are ready to learn at a more sophisticated level when they get to 4 years old. What we have to do is get all 68,000 kids in that universe to full-time pre-K. We can't have part-time seats anymore. We can't have kids on wait lists. We have to get all 68,000 served if we want to lay a foundation for our future. Thank you. So that's the first transition when a child goes from family into formal learning. That is the single most crucial transition. That's what we have to do better. The second transition I want to speak about, every parent can relate to this challenge, is middle school. Middle school has been that difficult, often dangerous time in a child's life. They're betwixt and between. They leave their family more. They leave their neighborhood more. The bad influences start to surround them. It's a time when our young people are either going to solidify the correct path and deepen their learning, or it's a time where they start to slip into the wrong path. And it's a time when class sizes start to go up. When you look at the national debate, it's pretty clear where we need to go. We need to extend learning time in one form or another. There are different attitudes out there of how to do it. There's not a lot of debate on the need to do something better and something more. Now, in New York City, it's clear, a lot of schools, most schools end around 3 p.m. It's that 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. reality that we care about. That's when we have a chance to really amplify learning, and it's when, bluntly, a lot of kids get in trouble if they don't have that good alternative. So if we want to be smart about where to put our strategic investment, it's right in that 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. time. We have the greatest model you could possibly ask for of how to do it right here in the city, the After School Corporation. Many of you know it well. The After School Corporation does something very smart, links with community-based organizations, extends the school day in a variety of manners. Let me give you an example. Thurgood Marshall Middle School in Harlem, they partner with the Abyssinian Baptist Church to make sure that kids get enrichment for the hours after school ends. You've got 180 kids in that middle school. 135 are participating in these enrichment activities because they want them. Their parents want them. They want that opportunity. This means, in the case of Thurgood Marshall, over 300 hours of additional academic enrichment each year, which is a profound difference maker. But here's the bad news. That model, it's a tremendous model. It's only in 5 schools. Thurgood Marshall is one of only 2 middle schools to get it. So we know it works, but we're not investing in it, even though it would be a profound difference maker for our city. Massachusetts, in 2005, actually pioneered extended learning time. That point started with about 20 schools. It built out from there. And a study of those initial schools in 2008 showed that the young people in extended learning time doubled their math and English scores, quadrupled their science scores. So we know the models that work, but we're not applying them citywide. Right now, it's catch as catch can. Some parents find it, some don't. Some kids get it, some don't. That's not where we need to be. So I'm proposing that the city take the after-school corporation model and provide grants to schools that will work with local community-based organizations to build out this extended time, to create after-school that truly enriches and strengthens their children academically. We would award up to $1 million grant per each school. They have to show us they have a viable partner and a plan, of course, and we would help them to build out that timing of the day through it. This approach could reach up to 2/3 of our middle school students, including many who are not being served in any way right now, and we would stop the fallacy of the school day ending at 3 o'clock for those who need more. So when you add that together, the early education piece in the middle school piece, if we had the courage to do this, if we were able to build this consensus to move forward, here's what we get. For the first time in New York City history, pre-K for 4-year-olds would be truly universal. There is no greater misnomer in the world than the words universal pre-K in this city. I see Robert Jackson nodding. It's not universal if everyone can't get it. It's not universal if you don't get enough hours. We'll take a maze of different programs and we coordinate them into one clear path. We would build out after school in that extended time, working with a model we know that works, and we'd have kids ready to learn at the beginning, ready to keep learning, and supported through these crucial transitions so they are able to learn throughout their educational career. Now, this is an investment. It costs money. What would it cost? It would cost about $291 million to provide the pre-K to every 4-year-old, with an additional about $50 million for leasing of space and other related expenses. It would take about $190 million to play out this extended learning time approach over the number of schools we're talking about. There would also, of course, be capital costs, but those can be accommodated. That is a matter of what we prioritize, and in my view, this is the most fundamental thing we could prioritize. The framework I would use to find these resources, well, it would have to be fair and progressive. It would have to be targeted to this purpose only. A lot of us in this room have seen government ask for revenue, and there's a little bit of 3-card Monte and sleight of hand. That's not acceptable to the taxpayers. It's not acceptable to the business community, but a targeted revenue stream that actually is used for what it's supposed to be used for, I have found a lot of reasonable people agree that's the kind of approach that works, and that's what we need if we want to move forward. The idea would be not to build more bureaucracy, but to build the middle class, to give kids the kind of educational foundation they need to truly move forward. And further, revenue needs to be based on a delineated time frame. It can't be anything open-ended. It's a mission we go on, and then we find other revenue of other types to replace it through the kinds of cost savings we need to make in the DOE and other agencies, and through some of the challenges that we're going to have going forward that we have to discuss as a city. We have to lower our public sector healthcare costs. We have to address and lower our pension costs. We need to find some of the programs that aren't working and eliminate or cut them back. These are the kind of things we're going to have to do over the coming years, and we have to do them collaboratively with our municipal workforce and with leaders across the city. But I'm urging that in the first instance, we bring in the revenue to get this kind of aggressive program started and then build out those other cost savings behind it. Now, some of you may be thinking this is an interesting place to come and make this proposal. You might say you have come to the lion's den. Well, I think it's a room full of people who care about New York City. I think it is a room full of people who know our educational status quo is unacceptable. And I also think it's a room full of people that know what a smart and strategic investment looks like. And this is the kind we need. The mechanism would be this: a 5-year surcharge on household incomes above $500,000, specifically, again, target only for early education and extended learning time programs, would generate, according to the IBO, the Independent Budget Office, about $532 million a year, again, over 5 years. We'd be asking people who have done well, who worked hard and did well, to contribute a little more to make this happen. Again, you'll be the first to be asked, but you won't be the last, because everyone is going to have skin in the game as we move this city forward. I'll finish with this. As I said earlier, this is a structural moment of change since the economic crisis began 4 years ago. And I think we're all catching up with it. I think our consciousness is still catching up with the sheer complexity of what we're facing. We're still catching up with the full notion of global competitiveness. We have a lot of changes we have to make. Human beings, and even more so governments, are a bit slow to respond to events and changing circumstances. It's time for us to catch up. You look at the national debate, we aren't even close. Our friends in the Tea Party on one extreme are not ready to invest in anything. There are some other people who think we have all the money in the world to invest, and we don't. We have to make pinpointed choices. But if we make those choices right, they help us build a middle class, they help us grow jobs throughout the city and obviously in our country. And they show people a pathway to shared prosperity, which is so desperately needed. We have to, all of us, keep restoring some hope. We have to show people that we actually know we're all in this together. We have to live out the words that Bill Clinton talked about in his speech in Charlotte. And finally, it's who we are. This is who New York City, the people of New York City are, the history of New York City. This is who we are. We have always been ahead of the curve economically. We have always been ahead of the curve educationally. That's part of how we became the greatest city in the world. We haven't sustained it in recent years, and let's be fair, we've been buffeted by some extraordinary crises. But I think this is the beginning of a pathway to get us back to that preeminence, so people from all over the world will look and see what they've always seen in New York City: the cutting edge, the most creative, the most dynamic, the best coordination between public and private sector, and the place where people come to join the middle class. Thank you very much.